Canada is officially in a recession, but it's only a technical one. So what does that even mean? It means that the economy is slowing down. Generally, that is not a good sign. But I don't think that it's as bad as some people are making it out to be. And some of those people, we include Mr. Pierre Poilievre, who is making it seem like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to Canada and is currently calling for an emergency debate on the topic. Been super outspoken since this has gone public about Canada being in a technical recession. He's doing his best to use this against Carney, especially because Carney has had such high approval ratings throughout his entire time being in office. You know, he's really trying to push this to get people to be unhappy. Pierre's gone so far as to say that Trump and his trade war stuff has had little to no effect on the reason why Canada is currently in a technical recession. He's saying that other nations have not been affected, that it's only us who have been so impacted by this. And not only is that literally just not true, but if you look at it too, we're like right next to the United States. Also, bro, I just realized this map I picked, it says Gulf of America. Like, we have to be trolling. Anyway, many liberals and NDPs have been upset with Carney and his policies, especially as he's been advocating for things like tax cuts and lowered government spending. Immigration rates have been going down. The population in Canada is going down. And it's funny because these are all things that are leading towards why the GDP has been lowering over the last 2 quarters. And it's funny because these are things Pierre wants to do himself. Finally, when these things actually happen, little to no surprise, the economy slows down. And so I definitely have a lot of criticisms with Carney and the way he's been approaching things. But one of the biggest ones is the debt, especially. And you can understand why he wants to keep doing tax cuts, right? It gives you a short-term win. You know, you get the conservatives to be like, ooh, maybe I do like this guy. Hold on. But I think the problem is that in the long term, these are really going to mess us up because the debt is already so bad and tax cuts are just going to keep on adding to that, right? Like, you can only do tax cuts for so long before you literally can't do it anymore. So somebody like Pierre has consistently come out and said that his policies are not the reason why the GDP has been lowering. That really, if anything, Carney hasn't been cutting taxes enough, or he hasn't been lowering government spending enough. He's also been very critical of Carney's inability to call a recession a recession. This is very ironic because in 2015, under Mr. Stephen Harper, Canada went through the literal exact same thing. Okay, the economy fell by 0.9% and 0.4%, which is actually bigger than the one we just faced in the last 2 quarters. And I feel like this kind of shows the impact of things like tax cuts and lowered government spending, where people try to sit there and tell me that, like, oh, Stephen Harper's the best economist of our decade. All the conservatives, they know what they're doing with the economy. But the last 2 times in Canada where we've done things like tax cuts, lower government spending, we've literally seen the opposite thing happen than growth. And also, to keep in mind, Pierre and Harper both refused to term it as a recession as well, which is kind of ironic as Pierre's calling Carney out for that. Stats Canada went back and basically said that the gap wasn't extreme enough, it wasn't big enough, and so they did not count it as an actual recession. It was just technically one by the books, but in reality, it didn't matter. I just think the irony from Pierre Poilievre is so funny. You know, when he goes out there and his policies don't work, they didn't go far enough, right? When he goes out and he calls someone out for something like, oh, why aren't you calling it as it is? You look back at his history, he's done the exact same thing. And so he's just kind of a little bit dumb. I can't lie to you. But what does this mean for the Canadian economy? Well, I would say at this point, it's pretty hard to say. It's hard to know what actually is going on with the Canadian economy. But before this, things were going pretty well. It was growing and it was supposed to keep growing. And Carney has done certain things like slow immigration, which certainly stops the growth of GDP, but it also has its benefits, you know, domestic benefits and things like that. But I think showing something like this kind of shows the downside to many conservative ideas where in practice they actually don't really work that well. And things like tax cut, like, it restricts the government, you know, and it makes the government sad. You know what I'm saying? But then when you have high taxes, everyone's happy, right? Kind of evens out the playing field, you know, when people have to put their money back into the economy rather than buying $1 billion painting and just holding it forever. Like, it actually surprisingly helps out the economy. I know. What a shocker. And when people talk about taxes like they're the worst thing ever, they don't realize that in like the 60s and 70s, when people were like, oh my God, times are so awesome, tax rates were so high up until a certain individual took office and ruined everything. But yeah, it just like literally high taxes just works. It's just always worked. And then I also think it's funny when you sit there and Republicans are like, oh my God, we're so good with the economy. We're so awesome with the economy. But if you look at the debt, and they're always like, we are gonna fix the debt. Bro, look at these, bro. I'll hide myself. Look at, yo, I don't even have to hide myself for Trump's because it's so big. Look at this. It's the Republicans every single time. They're the reasons why the debt in the US goes up every single time. You had Bill Clinton clutch up and run a surplus for a little bit, and then George Bush came in and was like, I'm actually just gonna go invade Iraq and spend all of our money. Okay. And then Trump's doing it again. But back to Canada, you know, it's obvious that it's slowing down a little bit, right? It's obvious that it seems like we're not growing right now. And I think that's a fair point to say. I think it's fair to point at this as a sign that things might not be as great as people like to say it is. You know, businesses are spending more, which is generally a pretty good sign of the economy. But I think people acting like Canada's screwed and it's over, you know, it's like, come on, like relax a little. Like GDP is expected to grow by at least 3% 2027 and to continue growing throughout the year. And so I just think this is one of those things where it's easy for the conservatives to just look at this and really just go, oh my God, this is so terrible. Like, we have to hate these guys. Like, these guys are so dumb. They don't know what they're doing. Like, I just think it's an easy thing to latch onto. And it's funny because 2015, the liberals did the exact same thing. And so I just think it's one of those terms where you hear recession and you go, oh my God, everything sucks. And so I just think people are creating this false idea that the economy is screwed. I think people want to act like the liberals don't know what they're doing and everything sucks and everything's going to be awful under Mark Carney. Like, I don't think he's been perfect, you know. I think he's done some things that are good, some things that are bad, but I mean, you do have to go through some hard times to eventually have things grow, right? And so I think, especially in times like right now where it's so uncertain and no one knows what's actually going on, I think it's hard to guess what's going to go on moving forward. But I feel like it's not really a surprise to see the economy slow down a little bit right now. I think we're just at a bad time in history. But I mean, we'll see what happens in the future. Things are supposed to keep on growing. So I don't think we're screwed forever. But I mean, we will see. Other than that, I just want to thank you guys for watching until the end. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video. If not, I will come find you and I will force you to subscribe. Okay.